before we get into all of that, because we're going to get into fans and we're going to get into some of the stuff that happened last night as we're recording this on a Tuesday, but I think it's only proper for us anyway to get into this Mel Tucker situation at Michigan State. And I just want to state at the top of this that we're not going to make any opinions or any types of judgments, because obviously the information that's out there is all that we have. And there's a lot of public information, but nowhere near the full story. We have no clue what actually took place in a lot of these things. All we can do is talk through this, the discomfort of the allegations, the discomfort of everything that is happening, and give some opinions based off of that, while trying not to either victim shame or just assume that somebody is trying to get a payday or assume that somebody is a creep. That's what makes these things so difficult. So I know that you have an opinion on this because you've done some reading on it, and I wanted to give you the floor to sort of talk about it, and then we can have a healthy debate if necessary.
Sure, and it is kind of unfortunate that today in these times that you can't really have an opinion or a strong opinion about these types of things without sort of putting yourself out there to be, I don't know what you would want to call it, canceled or just heavily criticized, which is fine. The moment you want to give your public opinion, you are opening yourself to criticism, which is fair. But just the manner in which people go about it these days is absurd. I mean, there's just no room for debate. It's either you're right or you're wrong. There's no in between. And I just don't think that that's how life works. There's just a lot of gray. And, sometimes when you get into the gray, it's not so clear. And in this case, I do feel like there's quite a bit of gray specifically. And, for those of you who maybe aren't fully aware of the situation, Mel Tucker, the head football coach at Michigan State, had brought in a woman who was involved with the program, talking about sexual assault, sexual harassment, things of that sort with the program and on the Michigan State campus over the last several years. At some point in time, I believe it was a couple years ago. I want to say it was like almost 2 years ago at this point.
I think it was 2021. And I also want to add, I think it's very important context that this woman not only is like an advocate for all these things, but she was a victim of it with
Yes.
football players specifically. And I think she's one of like the preeminent people in terms of talking about these things, because I think she's very nationally known. So this is not just some random victim who is nameless, faceless, as we usually have it, like in the Deshaun Watson case. So I just want to add that as context in case you didn't get to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and it sounds like, they were doing good things at Michigan State specifically. Mel Tucker had welcomed her into the program as far as everything I can tell. At some point in time in 2021, there was a phone conversation. And during that phone conversation, Mel Tucker was masturbating. She filed a Title IX claim with Michigan State University here fairly recently, and is claiming sexual assault, sexual harassment. There's so much to unpack in this situation, because on the surface, right there, when you just hear it, you're like, what a poor decision, first of all. And it is very creepy sounding when you hear it. But the more you dig deeper into it, they had a long-standing relationship of some kind. Now, when I say relationship, I don't mean necessarily sexual in nature, but a professional relationship that seemed to maybe evolve into more of a friendship of some sort over time. There's records out there now that, like the night of the incident, that phone call lasted 36 minutes. Mel Tucker was in the state of Florida. It was after midnight where he was. She was on the West Coast. It was 9:00 approximately where she was. And so, a late night conversation, 36 minutes in length. And the question that I have, again, I'm just asking sort of objective questions, because there's a lot we don't know. I don't know about you, but if I were put in that position, I would like to believe that if there was something I was very uncomfortable with that was occurring on a phone conversation, that I would hang up. Maybe it didn't happen until the 35th minute of that 36-minute conversation. That's not information that I have, and I do think that's relevant. But I want to say there's record of 27 phone conversations between the two of them that lasted over 30 minutes. So them having lengthy phone calls was a pretty regular thing. And I don't know about you, but I don't have a lot of lengthy phone conversations with people. Most people these days communicate via text more often than not. And not saying that you couldn't have completely professional conversations that are of that length of time. to me, I feel like you at least have to ask the question of, was there some sort of relationship that was at least flirtatious in nature that was occurring between the two of them. Now, even if so, if Mel Tucker obviously, he admittedly says that he did it. He's not denying the allegations. He's just denying the nature in which they are being presented. Again, from what I understand too, after the incident occurred, she had told some people about it, and so word kind of started to spread that he did this on the phone. He heard about it. He confronted her, said, hey, I don't appreciate you telling people these things. And then it sounded like he sort of pulled whatever levers necessary to cancel her next appearance on the campus of Michigan State and sort of put an end to that relationship as it existed. And then I believe his side of it is that once he put an end to things, that's when she decided to take action and make these allegations. So there's a lot of ways to look at it. At the very least, I think that one thing everyone could agree with is Mel Tucker is a lousy husband, right? For partaking in even just that one single act on the phone with another woman while married and a father and everything else. But I think that it's unfortunate that, I don't know how you have your cake and eat it too in this situation. You want to take every allegation that's made towards these types of things very seriously. At the same time, you don't want to allow for people to make false or inaccurate allegations about these types of things about someone, because this is very serious. And even just the allegations alone, whether true or false, can stick with somebody forever, especially if you're a public figure like Mel Tucker is. And I mean, this could seemingly, like, whether it's true or not, even if he is exonerated of any wrongdoing from a criminal perspective, there's a lot of universities that will never touch him. He may never he may never coach football again. It's very possible, just based on the allegations alone. So I know I'm kind of bouncing around and rambling a little bit, but just I feel like the mainstream media is making it to be very black and white. And I think that when you start digging into it, there's a lot of gray in the situation.
I think what makes these situations so tough is this is not an accusation of something that is so incredibly provable, like murder or theft or something like that. And I think that what has happened here is we as a society have gone to the place of just making sure that we believe every single person that has any type of accusation against another person, right? Without thinking about what are some of these gray areas that you talk about. And I think that the gray areas are always worth exploring because somebody's reputation is on the line. And whether that's my reputation, your reputation, or what have you, I think that you always should do the most due diligence that you can in all of these situations. And I think that for all of the cases that we've seen where the people are obviously a creep, and let's take the guy from that '70s show who just got convicted of rape, right, for 30 years to life in prison. And then you have the Matt Ariza situation from last year. That guy lost his job, hasn't been employed since, and all the investigations took place and couldn't find that he was actually part of any wrongdoing, that anything like that took place. I think what makes this situation in particular complicated is the fact that it's a college football program. We all assume that they're going to protect the money. We all assume that they're going to protect the coach. But also, it happens to be at the university where the Larry Nassar stuff took place. And that is the part of it, the connection point that becomes very uncomfortable because you know just how bad that was. Now, a lot of people will say that maybe we can question the full culpability of Michigan State in that, but it was obvious that there were a lot of people who were culpable in that. Michigan State was part of the chain of people who let a lot of those things take place. And so then you have this situation with Mel Tucker. Now, I will echo what you said. Mel Tucker made what I would think is not the smartest decision he's probably ever made, because I think when you have the Larry Nassar stuff in the past of the university, and let's be clear, Mel Tucker is an employee of the university and by extension, an employee of the state. So there are some things that don't apply to other people that do apply to him in this case. And I think that if I were him, I would not want to be anywhere close to a situation that could have this type of an implication. And the other thing is that, as you pointed out, there are a lot of very lengthy phone calls late at night at hours that most people don't talk business. But in his game, maybe that's the only time that he can talk business. And so there's just too many complicating factors for me to feel one way or the other. And the headlines have told you that he's guilty, basically, because the court of public opinion nowadays always assumes that that is the case. We obviously don't know that. We don't. And I think that most likely it's somewhere in the middle between what the accuser is saying and what Mel Tucker is saying. And we won't actually ever know because Mel Tucker will probably get fired. He's suspended right now. But there's just a lot of details of this that make it feel different to me than some of the other stories that we have heard. And Mel Tucker obviously is going to come out and try and make sure that everybody knows that he didn't do this against somebody's will. But I, like you, have a lot of questions. It just makes me very sad that these things still take place. And I feel like as a guy in this country, especially a married guy, just make better decisions. I think that that's a fair thing, like fair accountability for Mel Tucker. Is he going to be the first, or he's not the first coach to cheat on his wife? He's not the last coach to do anything like this, right? We're going to hear about this forever. Infidelity, I don't care. You want to make that decision for yourself, go for it. But when you're a public figure, I think making better decisions is an okay thing to ask of people in those situations. And I've been pretty consistent about that. It doesn't have to be sexual harassment. I've asked Bob Huggins to make better decisions. I've asked a lot of people to make better decisions. And that's just where I find myself being in that it's unfortunate that all of this is happening. And whatever the outcome is, I just would like people, more specifically men in powerful positions, to just think a little bit harder before they actually act on something. That's all.
Yeah, and what makes this even worse is that in either side of this, there's nothing worse than making allegations about something that happened to you that's absolutely true and not being taken seriously. And there's nothing worse than being accused of something like this and it not being true. Like that's what's so hard is like both of them, one, they are both simultaneously in a really poor situation as a result of this because there's going to be people who blindly defend each of them with a no regard for the facts probably, and there's going to be people who blindly attack each of them with no regards for the facts. And that's unfortunate that people can't just wait and see how it all shakes out, but just we live in this world of instant reaction and who's the first person to take a side and to have an opinion or a hot take. And it's tough because these people also, man, they have families. Mel Tucker has children, and and yeah, he put himself in this position, whether consensual or not. Like he created the environment for this sort of thing to occur. So whether what took place was consensual or not, like he's he has made mistakes here for sure. And what's also true is that they could have had some sort of a consensual, flirtatious relationship and him also act inappropriately in a way that made her uncomfortable. Like both of those things could be true. Like it doesn't have to be one or the other. And a couple other things worth mentioning. Brenda Tracy is her name, by the way. I feel like we should say her name. We're throwing Mel Tucker's name out there. Brenda Tracy is the woman's name, who is the sexual assault, sexual harassment advocate nationwide, very popular, as you said. She texted him a couple months after the date of the incident and wished him a happy Father's Day. Now, she could have just be her being courteous and a polite person, but then also I think it raises the question of like if you feel like you were harassed in some way by a person and someone crossed that line with you, it just seems odd that you might extend that sort of courtesy. Like I said, there's so many strange things back and forth, and all I guess I'm really trying to say is I feel like we should leave this out of the court of public opinion and wait and see what the facts tell us about the situation. Because as you mentioned at the top, with what's out there in the public right now, I'm sure we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah, and we'll never get all of the facts, but the couple other things that I want to talk about here is USA Today obviously drops this article. Now, when I think of USA Today, I think of them as the newspaper you'd get at hotels whenever you traveled. Like, I've never seen anybody just sort of walking around with USA Today. I've never associated them. The point I'm trying to make, I never associated with them with one side or the other when it comes to journalism. A lot of papers are seen as liberal, but obviously in today's news cycle, there's conservative news, liberal news, and there's very little in the middle news as it relates to a lot of these stories. I know that Michigan State was told about these things back in December. Obviously, it's September now, and we hadn't heard a peep from Michigan State. I don't know how long those types of Title IX investigations are and so forth. I do know from reading a few things that I believe a Title IX investigation it has to do with athletes. So I'm kind of curious how this works for Mel Tucker. I know he's been very adamant about the fact that this hearing that they're having in October, I think he feels like it's a railroading, that it's not a fair trial. It's not even really a trial for him. Like, there's so many different things about this, and I don't know all the ins and outs of it. But it's interesting to me that the USA Today could come up with all of these facts, or at least what are perceived as facts, and put them out in the public eye. And Michigan State almost didn't even know. When they called a press conference to get out ahead of this, they didn't realize what the allegations really were, and they sort of had to backtrack. It's just strange to me that a university like Michigan State would be so unprepared for this when they were caught literally with their pants down with the Larry Nassar thing. Like, that is very, very, very strange to me. I do know in my mind, I just want to be clear, I do not believe in these, but if you were a conspiracy theorist of some kind, you could jump to the conclusion that Brenda Tracy, because being a victim of sexual harassment and being an advocate for it, that something like this, whether fabricated or not, would continue to help her as an advocate going forward. I can see people jumping to that conclusion. I just want to, again, make very clear, I'm not jumping to that conclusion, but it fits in line with what you said about people are going to blindly do one or the other as it relates to this. And I wish we as a society could get to a place where these things weren't always in the court of public opinion. There are certainly things that we should know as citizens of this country, but these types of things always make me wonder why I have to know this. Like, did I need to know that Tiger Woods cheated on his wife with all those waitresses? No, I actually didn't need to know that. However that falls legally is between the two of them. It shouldn't be something that I know about. But when you are elevated to a level of celebrity, and Mel Tucker is like a B or C list celebrity at best. I would even say in college football, he's probably a B or C list celebrity.
Not
You
anymore.
No, you're going to hear about it. But another thing is they had a ton of kids leave after going 11-2 his first season. They went 5-7 last year. So are there things maybe, again, within the program that we don't know? I think that there is a lot of things that we'll just never know about it. I think, though, the overall message you and I are trying to spread is to do some critical thinking, do some reading, think about what is being presented to you, and just know at the top of it, even if you feel very confident in the way that you feel, you, like us, do not have all the facts, and we never will unless you're one of the two of them. There's no way that anybody like us is going to have all the facts, and that's why we're going to sit it out in terms of making any types of judgments or condemning anybody, because we just don't know. All I know, it's a sad situation overall, and I think you and I can both agree.
Oh, absolutely. And part of one thing I think could have occurred, questioning Michigan State and how they handled this, the fact that they came out sort of without all the facts, like you said, and almost overreacted initially. Do you feel like because of the Nasser situation that this that they're going to act swiftly and what's the word I'm looking for? Swiftly and intensely, maybe, to show that they have, hey, they're taking this type of stuff seriously, and is Mel Tucker kind of going to take the brunt of sins of the past in a way? You know what I mean?
I do. I think that Michigan State is going to be, I'm going to use a big word here, I think they're going to be very punitive in how they dole out whatever consequences are for this. I do believe, and Mel Tucker made innuendos to this, that they don't want to be a part of the stink of the Nassar stuff. And I get that. It was a PR nightmare. It is still a PR nightmare, even though he is now dead. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy, I think is what you said to me. But all of that is bad press. Like, there is such a thing as bad press. And that was like the worst situation almost that you could possibly imagine happening in a systemic way at a university. And so for this to come so close to it, if you're one of the administrators and you're thinking about, what do we do here? Like, just the fact that this is in our space is uncomfortable enough. And everybody's jumping to the same conclusion that we are, where we're not even trying to connect the dots, but it's easy to say that this Nassar thing happened at Michigan State. And I think that they almost have to act punitively because, as you pointed out, they need to for the court of public opinion. And whether or not we agree that that's how we should be making decisions, that is 100% how many companies, many individuals who have something to lose, that's how they make their decisions. And they're going to try to do whatever they can to be as seen as good as possible in the optics right now. And then what a lot of them do is you move on and they will hire another head coach. They'll probably hire a head coach who is like the most pristine Mr. Rogers guy that you could possibly imagine. And then whenever the time is right, when the program probably doesn't do very well, they'll hire the guy that they actually want who has no morals, has no scruples, and will win a national title, right? Like, but by then, we'll have all forgotten about this. And I think that is the hope for Michigan State. Right or wrong, I think that's what they're hoping to do and what they will do.
No, you're probably right, and this should go without saying, but I do feel like it needs to be said that we are in no way, shape, or form trying to downplay the seriousness of sexual harassment, sexual assault, at all. So I think it's a terrible thing, and there are way too many women who are sort of shamed into silence about these sort of things. I want women to feel like not even just women, there are men that happens to as well. Like they should feel comfortable coming forward with this stuff when it happens, and it should be taken seriously. And at the same time, though, I think we're also against. We're okay with people being held accountable. We just want to make sure that all the facts are known, and that the due diligence is being done to not maybe falsely accuse someone or to misconstrue facts. And so, either way, I just hope that the truth prevails in the end, whichever way it is. I just hope the facts come out and it's handled appropriately. Whoever Mel Tucker is found to be guilty of what took place, it's handled, and he receives whatever sort of punishment or discipline that the university sees fit. And it will just be that, right? I mean, it'll just be what the university sees fit. Because if this were to happen between a random person, just some guy and a woman, like it would be nothing. It wouldn't. There would be the police wouldn't be called. I don't know that this would even, and again, not downplaying it. I'm just saying by the letter of the law, I don't even know that this would qualify as a crime necessarily. So it's just more so because of the role that Mel Tucker's in, especially being a state employee, and it obviously exhibits really poor decision making and not behavior unbecoming of a university and state of Michigan employee would probably be the best way to describe it.
Well, that's the other thing too, is she was hired and paid by the university. So like this is a work relationship. And that's why I said not the best decision that he has ever made, because this lady was getting paid an appearance fee to show up and talk to the team about this stuff. And so again, both of them, if this is a professional relationship that they're having that bleeds into a personal relationship, we all know that like you generally don't, what did Tony Soprano say? You don't shit where you eat. And that applies across the board for anybody, no matter where that you work. And again, I'm not condemning at all whether it happened or and all these different things, but like I'm thinking Mel Tucker, like this is an employee relationship at this point, because it is more complicated than that. This isn't somebody that just sort of came on pro bono to do this, that is a friend of a friend or something like that. I mean, they got the preeminent person who was talking about these things. And so a lot of it is just it's all sad. But I will say this. We are talking about this from both sides because that's what we always do with just about everything. But I will say that this is a safe space for anybody who watches or listens who is a victim or has been a victim of this. We would love to hear your story and have your story amplified by whatever platform that we have, because that's what we believe in. Like, we don't believe that you should automatically assume one way or the other. And I think that we are the type of people who would open ourselves to hearing about those things as uncomfortable as they are. So even though we have spent a good portion of the start of this show talking about this, I think it's just important for us to make very clear that we always talk both sides of this, because rarely is anything black and white. And it's sad, really, across the board.